下面一个报告人是杰夫·布恩斯坦先生。杰夫·布恩斯坦先生是美国机器人工业协会的主席。他报告的题目是北美机器人市场发展的主要趋势。有请布恩斯坦先生。
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to discuss the key developments in the North American market. I'd like to tell you a little bit about when I got involved in robotics. It was in 1983. At that point, the industrial robot industry was going to be the next industrial revolution. We were going to have $1 billion in robot sales by 1990. There were going to be service robots in our homes and in every part of our lives. Financial firms were investing money in the robotics industry with the expectation of this tremendous growth. We were seeing market studies about how people were going to lose their jobs. We were hearing fears about artificial intelligence and how machines were going to become so much smarter than humans. Well, here we are, 2017, and this is the point we're at again. But what happened in the 1980s was in the United States, General Motors, the largest customer for robots, canceled a whole bunch of orders. And the robot industry went into the doldrums. In fact, there were stories about how robotics didn't work. Industrial robots painting each other. The news media left the robot industry for dead, but we've recovered. And that's why I was so impressed by Vice Minister Jin's comments about staying calm. It's an evolutionary process, being smart about the development of this industry. So let's see where we are in North America and the United States right now. We are seeing robots selling in record numbers. Every year we're seeing double-digit growth, particularly coming out of the Great Recession of 2010. 2017 is off to the best start in the history of the industrial robot industry in the United States and in North America. We're on pace for a very substantial year with close to 40,000 robots being sold and close to $2 billion in sales. Terrific times for people in the robotics industry. However, let's take a look at the profile of the user community. Nearly 70% of the robot orders are going to automotive manufacturers and their component suppliers. This is true of the early days of the industrial robot industry in North America. And so while we see a significant amount starting to develop in areas like food and consumer goods and metals and plastics and rubbers, it's still the automotive industry that's driving the train. Look at the substantial growth in some of these market areas related to automotive. Automotive components in the first half of 2017 up 55%. And again, while there are significant increases in just about every area, it's the big markets that are really moving this industry forward in North America. Let's look at non-automotive. For many years we talked about, in order for the robot industry to really realize its potential, we were going to have to grow in non-automotive areas. And we're finally starting to see significant year-on-year growth. Certainly smaller than in the automotive industry, but we're averaging over the past several years more than 9% growth in non-automotive. And I think that's accelerating. So, again, if you look at where these applications of robots are, what do you see? You see material handling is the largest segment of robot applications. And of course, you see spot welding and arc welding. This is exactly what you would expect if most of the robots are going into the automotive industry, as they are. But you're also seeing growth in other areas, and particularly assembly. And I'm going to talk more about assembly in a few minutes and why I think that holds a great growth potential. As you look at these growth rates by application area, look at the tremendous growth in material removal. Small segment, but it's encouraging that we're seeing growth. Arc welding, again, a big segment, growing significantly. And as you go on down the line, you'll see just about every area is growing significantly, except for inspection. But again, these are small segments, and so a few orders here or there can change it dramatically from year to year. But the big areas like welding and even material handling, which is the largest area, growing significantly. So, collaborative robots is the subject of lots of discussion, not only in North America, but throughout the world. Now, in reality, there's no such thing as a collaborative robot. There are collaborative applications where people and robots are working together or in the same workspace, but there's nothing that's identified as a collaborative robot. Although, even RIA will refer to certain products as collaborative robots because it's easier, because this gives the customers an idea of what we're talking about. But there are definitions that have been established by the International Standards Organization, for instance, on what we're referring to when we talk about collaborative robots. And these are robots designed for direct interaction with a human in a defined collaborative workspace. Collaborative workspace being a safeguarded area where the robot and human can work together and at the same time. And then a collaborative operation is one in which it's purposely designed for the robots to work in direct cooperation with a human in this defined workspace. Now, why is there so much excitement about collaborative robots? Well, these are the promises of this new technology, that they're simple to install and use. Now, the great criticism of the industrial robot industry over the years, particularly by small and medium-sized companies, is that they were too complex, too costly, required too much capital investment, needed too many engineering resources internally, and so a lot of companies, particularly small companies, shied away from industrial robots. But they're very excited about collaborative robots. Now, the costs are lower because there are no fences required for these robots. You don't have to invest heavily in these guarding systems. You don't have to have as much floor space available because the robots and the people are working in close proximity to each other. And you have reduced engineering costs because you may not even have to hire system integrators to set up the collaborative robots. So we do a series of workshops and webinars and all sorts of educational activities based around collaborative robots because there's certainly a great deal of interest. Now, the flexibility of collaborative robots. They're not big machines that have to be in one place behind fences. They're adaptive and reconfigurable. You can move them around the plant. They're easy to train. They're portable, as I said. And so they hold a lot of benefits if indeed they deliver on these promises. However, there are challenges. And as we see these market studies again coming out about the tremendous growth to expect in the collaborative robot market, think about these challenges a little bit. Temper your expectations. So safety is an issue. They're being sold as completely safe. Well, they're not completely safe because it depends what the collaborative robot is holding. We give the example of what if there's a knife or some other sharp object in the gripper of the collaborative robot and it is next to a person and hits him in the eye. This happens, somebody loses an eye. So you have to do a complete risk assessment of a collaborative robot in the same way that you would an industrial robot. Then, of course, there's the perception that they take jobs. Now, of course, this is true of industrial robots, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But if you're a person working in a small company and they bring in a collaborative robot to work side by side with you, there are a lot of people who are worried that that means that their coworker isn't going to have a job going forward. So we have to change the perception in order to really win more acceptance in the marketplace among the user community. So these are promises that are being made, expectations that are being elevated, but we need to make sure that everybody understands the safety guidelines and that when these collaborative robots are installed, that they truly are safe. Now, another issue that's come up when I talk to users and I talk to system integrators, they say, you know, we'd like to install collaborative robots, but we have a problem. We can't find a lot of applications where they're suitable. They're too slow. Most of them don't have a high enough payload. And we find that in many cases, a traditional industrial robot is a better solution for the customer. So that's another thing that I think tempers the, at least near-term, growth prospects for collaborative robots. Artificial intelligence. I mentioned back in the early 80s, there was lots of talk about where we were with artificial intelligence. And then we didn't hear about that for a long time. What we're hearing about now, this isn't necessarily in connection to robotics, although I understand that robots like Pepper may be using technologies like IBM Watson, but we certainly hear about IBM Watson. It's kind of the poster child of how far artificial intelligence is advanced. And I like to talk about Watson because it's a good way to explain to people how robotics and artificial intelligence can make our lives better. One of the best applications of Watson has been in working with doctors. There's so much medical research out there, doctors don't have enough time to read through it all and to stay on top of everything that's happening. And Watson, working with the doctors, can help develop treatment scenarios, help find cures for diseases, and can really work in a collaborative manner with the medical community. So I think this is an example of how these technologies like AI and machine learning shouldn't be seen as threats to people. Now, machine learning, this one really is being used and is very important going forward to the development of the robotics industry. So it used to be, and still is in most cases, you have to program a robot. And then you install another robot and you have to program that one as well. We're getting to a point where the robot can be told what you want it to do, and it can teach itself the best way to do it. And then, of course, there's the promise of, well, if I teach one robot, I should be able to communicate all that information via the cloud to all the other robots. So I only have to teach it once, and I can have thousands of robots learning from that one experience. And actually, it can teach itself the first time. It's an exciting development for robotics. Vision. We've been talking again since the early 80s about how important machine vision is to the development of the robotics industry. The reality is most robots don't have vision yet. And there are a lot of benefits to having robots on vision, whether it be in 2D scenarios or 3D. And so we're seeing more and more robots with vision in tasks like preventing accidental tool collisions or handling different colored parts. And of course, bin picking, that's been something that companies were working on for many years unsuccessfully, but now are able to do in most cases. So I think we're going to see continued development of machine vision as it relates to robotics. Okay, now you get into a whole bunch of buzzwords. When I talk to people in the robotics industry in North America and throughout the world, Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, IIoT, all these words are being thrown about as this new revolution. There's something to it, of course, as machines become connected to the internet, but making this understandable, the importance of this understandable to companies has been a challenge to us because it seems overwhelming. There's sensors on everything and companies are being told they've got to embrace Industry 4.0 or the industrial Internet of Things. They don't really know how to do it, and a lot of companies are kind of ignoring it. So we try to find examples related to robotics that might help them understand how it can impact them and benefit them going forward. So we talked to FANUC, one of the world's leading robot manufacturers. They're working with General Motors on a program called ZDT, or Zero Downtime Technology. So ZDT is monitoring the health and stability of the robots continuously worldwide for General Motors. Now, General Motors happens to be the world's largest robot customer, we believe. Every year, they're finding that there are these downtime events that are being prevented by this new ZDT technology. Now, what happens when there's downtime? If the robot isn't working, the line is potentially shut down for hours. That's a huge cost to the user company, in this case General Motors. And so they've got 30,000 robots. It would be a lot better if they had a heads up from the robot that we're about to fail, do something to maintain us so that you can keep the line up and running. And as of today, they have about 8,000 or more of their 30,000 robots with this ZDT technology. And as the customers say, they don't need more data, they need more information. And information in this case is, when's the robot going to break down so that we can maintain it and not have to shut the line? I have a short video to show you on how this works.
ZDT is already protecting more than 5,000 robots at 26 GM factories in 4 countries.
FANUC's ZDT application collects data from GM's robots every 90 seconds and analyzes it in FANUC's cloud-based data center to prevent downtime, predict maintenance requirements, and optimize cycle time, energy consumption, and process quality. For downtime, if ZDT identifies a potential issue, the customer and FANUC service team are notified and equipment is quickly directed to the site so the issue can be corrected before downtime occurs.
ZDT has been 100% successful at eliminating targeted downtime and is being expanded to enhance GM's manufacturing efficiencies and world-class vehicle quality.
Okay, hopefully that also is helping lower costs of cars to the consumer. Another big trend in the robotics market, not only in the United States and North America, but worldwide, is mobile robots. So when I got involved in this field, most of the mobile robots were following a track along the factory floor. Today, robots are moving autonomously in facilities, and it's a big deal in warehousing. So you have companies like Amazon or Walmart or FedEx in their distribution centers and warehouses using mobile robot technology to reduce errors, to speed the material flow, to help consolidate storage space and future-proof their operations, improve ergonomics. You know, people walking miles a day or lifting or getting up on high shelves, that's not a great thing for people. Enabling traceability and predictability. And of course, we also see mobile robots in the military being used to help keep people out of harm's way. This is a big trend as a mobile robot base, and increasingly with industrial robot arms being put on mobile robot bases. And this is a trend to watch. This is happening very quickly. A lot of companies are emerging in this space with very good technology. And as I said, if you go into a warehouse or logistics center, you're going to see more and more of these used with people walking next to these robots. Their safety systems are good for the most part. There's vision used, and they're connected to the cloud in many cases. So mobile robots is a very, very important trend to keep an eye on. Okay, government funding. We heard from the Vice Minister about government programs throughout the world, certainly the Made in China 2025. In the United States, we did launch the National Robotics Initiative in 2011, and we continue to provide support, not to the extent of China or Japan or Korea or many other countries, but we are providing significant support to the development of robotics in the United States. So this Advanced Robotics Manufacturing Innovation Hub is part of the Manufacturing USA network, which we hope is going to revitalize American manufacturing and incentivize companies to invest in new technology developments. It's based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, around Carnegie Mellon University. There are state and local governments involved, universities, nonprofit organizations such as our own from all across the country. And so far, it's about a $250 million program, with the bulk of it coming from industry and about $80 million in federal funding. It just was recently launched. They're still getting their programs together, but there are certainly significant hopes that it will help speed the development of robots and get it into the hands of more companies in the U.S. Okay, I told you I'd talk about robots and jobs because this is what I talk about just about every day. People are calling saying they read a study or there's another article out that says robots are job killers. Of course, you can go to another study and another article and see that robots are helping improve productivity and they're not killing jobs. As I said, I feel like this is all anybody wants to talk about when they talk about robotics, is the impact on jobs. So let me briefly describe our position on this. We believe that the real threat to jobs in America or anywhere else in the world is when companies can no longer compete, because that's when every job is at risk. And so automation is often used to help companies compete, and by allowing them to build better products at a lower cost and have the opportunity to win jobs that they might not have otherwise won. We have a website, a3automate.org, with a series of videos talking to small businesses and large businesses as well about why they automated and how it helped them compete. Many of them say, since they introduced the robots into their company, they won new business that allowed them to hire more people than they had before they introduced the robots. And so we talk about these case studies frequently. But for us, this is an issue that's not going away anytime soon. We try to back up what we say with facts. So we've been reading studies that said that as the use of robot accelerates, more and more people are going to lose their jobs. So we looked at this period from 2010, when we came out of the Great Recession in the U.S. and around the world. This is the record period of robot sales in the history of time. In our country, there were more than 136,000 robots shipped since 2010 to the end of 2016. But during that time, manufacturing jobs, which had been in decline, actually increased by nearly 900,000. And the unemployment rate, which was around 10%, fell in half. It declined by over 5%. Now that doesn't look like a technology that is a job killer. And if you go back further, we've done studies that show from 1996 to 2016, or 1997, a 20-year period, whenever robot sales go up, unemployment in the United States falls. And when robot sales fall, unemployment in the United States rises. Exactly the opposite of what many of the studies and the news media articles tell you. So this is something we're very passionate about, is trying to make it clear jobs change, new jobs develop. And if it weren't for robots, companies in the U.S. would have a very hard time competing. This is helping companies around the world compete, even here in China, which won so many manufacturing jobs. It's now the fastest growing user of robotics. And I believe in part because there's a recognition that you can't just hold manufacturing jobs if you don't use the best technology, produce the best products, the highest quality, get them to the customers quickly. Robots help companies do that. But there is a skills gap. If you ask our members, and we have more than 1,000 member companies in our robotics and machine vision and motion control associations, they'll tell you their number one problem is finding qualified people. Part of it's due to the education setup in the United States. We're not training people for the jobs that are available now or going to be available. There are studies that show that by 2025, there will be 2 million jobs left unfilled due to the skills gap. You can't find people to do these jobs. This is a problem, and this will hold back the growth of our manufacturing community. Used to be there were apprenticeship programs on a wider scale in the United States. They've fallen by about 40%. Germany does a good job at apprenticeship programs. We need to do so as well. There's a lot of STEM jobs out there, as I said. It's going to continue to grow. But we've told people that they have to go get a 4-year degree if they want to be successful in our society. Well, the reality is, small companies in particular are telling us we could send people to community colleges. We can send them to technical schools to get the kind of training they need, the hands-on training that would make them valuable at our companies right now. And so some of these programs are developing that are providing the skills training, but it's on a very low level. At a national basis, it's not there. You go to states like Ohio, they've got really innovative programs that are training the next generation of workers and retraining current workers on hands-on real needs of customers in their community. This is something we need to widen in order to make sure that we're able to keep up with the demand for skilled workers. If you want to read more about these jobs and how we view the future of sustainable careers, we have a white paper that you can download for free at our a3automate.org website. We also have a white paper there on robots and jobs and a lot of other useful information like those videos that I mentioned. We do a big trade show, Automate 2017. It was in April of this year. The reason I bring it up, if you're interested in what's going on in the robot community in terms of the industrial segment in North America, this is the event to go to. We were so thrilled to have our first ever Chinese companies at the show this year, like Singsong and HRG and many others. And we held a US-China Robot Forum. It was a great event. I think it's really significant in order to continue the dialogue between the US and Chinese companies to make sure that we support events like WRC and other events in China, and that we continue to support events in the US as well. We have the event every 2 years, so it'll be held 2019. Anybody who wants more details about that event can find it at automateshow.com. For people who like to do networking in the industrial robot industry in North America, or machine vision or motion control, we have a great networking event, no exhibits, next January in Orlando, Florida. Anybody who's interested in that, again, there's information available. This is really important. We find that networking is where many companies go to find new partners, new suppliers, new distributors. And if companies from China are looking to build relationships in the United States, it's often made at networking events such as this one. That's all I have to say. Again, I appreciate the opportunity. I'll be around if anybody has questions. Thank you very much.
刚才冉教授不仅介绍了美国这个机器人事业的发展，而且还用美国的这个事实来反驳了机器人就是 jobs killer 这种说法，很有意思。那我们再次表示感谢。